When the January 2026 super alarm ignited the world, Savorinen from Finland predicted these extreme weather events in advance, and the scientific community sleeps in its bed of roses. Jupiter, Earth, Sun, Venus, and Mars on the 10th of January 2026. The planets aligned in a straight line. Earth trembled, the sun awakened, and the world began to change. Okay, let's go through what followed Australia. Koji rose from the sea like a wall. Queensland drowned in 600 millimeters. Floods took roads, homes, electricity. A heat wave burned the continent brown, 50 degrees in the shade, even the nights glowed. The Otways burned, the sky was orange. Sydney and Canberra drowned in thunderstorms. Savorinen saw this coming, but no one listened. Hero. Goretti tore across the Atlantic, winds howled over 200 snow-buried cities. Arctic cold squeezed the continent in its grip. Albania flooded, Iberia stormed, Chandra drowned, Ireland, Dublin stood underwater. The slopes of Sicily collapsed under the weight of rain. Savorinen warned, the scientific community continued its rosy sleep. United States. Ferns split the continent. From Mexico to Canada, half of America stopped. 1 million without power, ice crushed the lines. Arctic air killed, 41 confirmed. NASA and FEMA raised the alert. Ice, snow, and wind turned the land into a trap. The signal was clear, but the scientific community slept in its bed of roses. South America. Chile burned like an oven. Bayou Bio and Nublo glowed red. Over 45,000 hectares to ash, 50,000 evacuated. Patagonia scorched in drought. Brazil's F2 tornado ripped houses from their foundations. Colombia flooded, Medellin turned into a river. The forecast was made, but the scientific community continued its rosy sleep. Africa. Mozambique, Zimbabwe, South Africa, and Eswatini. Rain dumped a year's water in a few days. Crocodiles swam in the streets, bridges collapsed. East Africa dried at the same time. Millions without water, fields died. The harmattan blew strangely, winds ignored the weather books. Savorinen said what was coming. The scientific community was surprised and continued its rosy sleep. Indonesia collapsed into mud. Pasir Langu buried dozens dead. In Afghanistan, mud brick houses fell under the rain dust. Japan drowned in snow. Hokkaido stopped. Kamchatka got 2 more meters of snow. Turkey's water spout rose like a tower of the sea. Southeast Asia glowed with heat in the middle of winter. Savorinen warned, the scientific community continued its rosy sleep. The whole planet awoke. The super alignment also activated the sun, and after an 8-day delay, an X1.9 long duration flare struck directly and rapidly toward us. A G5 storm shook the planet. The polar vortex broke, the jet stream tore. The stratosphere warmed with only a 2-day delay, and extreme events exploded on every continent. Finland flipped upside down, the south froze, Norga melted, and every continent told the same story. Something had changed, Earth had been activated just as predicted. Savorinen saw this before the storms, before the floods, before the flames, before the avalanches. He read the signs in the sky, the planetary lines, but the world was not ready to listen. Now the seas, the mountains, the deserts, and the cities all shout the same truth. It was not coincidence, it was a signal, and only one man understood the signal. The alignment passed, but its echo remained. Does the scientific community now listen to Savorinen, the man who predicted these exceptional weather extremes for January 2026? No, it does not. The scientific community continues its rosy sleep and babbles nonsense about space supposedly doing tricks. It is not space that expands. The truth is too much for the entire scientific community. It is easier to convince themselves and each other that it is space which expanding some way to somehow. The truth that one's own body is made of expanding energy, recycling through expanding congestion zones of energy, is still too frightening for today's scientific community. Savorinen has figured out how the universe truly works, and now we wait for a new generation with the guts to think in a completely new way. The sun's motion in the sky is an illusion, so is the motion when the January 2026 super real element, because the volume of matter is also. Einstein never managed to grasp this. When the January 2026 dark energy into space, from which detectable particles like electrons and photons emerge, and how the universe truly works. And now we wait for a new generation with the guts to think in a completely new way. The sun's motion in the sky is an illusion, so is the motion of a fallen apple toward Earth's center an illusion. The expanding fallen apple moves away from Earth's expanding center, but slower than Earth's expanding surface. Atomic nuclei expand and recycle, expanding dark energy into space, from which detectable particles like electrons and photons emerge. And they too expand at the same rate as matter and light expand. Time is relative because the volume of matter is also. Einstein never managed to grasp this. Savorinen from Finland did. Here we have the key to the theory of everything.